The Bears? Thank God for that.
Check 1 2. Check 1 2.
Uh-oh. Are you talking about me again? I will get sure. How late did you stay last time?
Yeah, it's like, I might as well be home like once. Yeah. Hug them for, before the end time.
Well, 30 minutes in the elevator down Street. He's with that. There he is.
Good afternoon, everyone. Now that Councillor Capers has arrived, we can begin. As you know, we start each Transit Commission meeting by recognizing and inspiring OC Transpo employees who have gone above and beyond the call of duty to help others in need. Today, you'll hear 4 incredible stories from the months of January, February, and March. I'm thinking that perhaps I don't have the right notes. Thank you. Skip that page. Last September, that makes more sense, there were a total of 9 calls for assistance from the TransSecure program. And without further ado, here's the story of OC Transpo's TransSecure recipient for September. On the afternoon of September 6th, the bus operator Mozafar was servicing the final stop along his route when he realized that a customer had not disembarked the bus. He walked toward the back of the bus and noticed a female customer who appeared to be unconscious. After several attempts to communicate with the unresponsive customer, Mozafar realized he was facing what could be a potentially serious situation. He quickly returned to the front of the bus and contacted the control center to dispatch transit law staff and an emergency response crew to the scene. Upon arrival, emergency services rushed the woman to the hospital, where she immediately received treatment. After she regained consciousness, she admitted that she had ingested a large number of sleeping pills in an attempt to take her own life. Thanks to Mozafar's good judgment and quick actions, the transit customer was able to receive the care and help she desperately needed. Please join me in recognizing Mozafar for his quick thinking and compassion. And Mozafar, I'm honored to present you with something special. So, do we have any declarations of interest? Seeing none, we have confirmation of the minutes from October 19th, 2016.
Carried. Mr. Chair.
Councillor Commissioner Mallow.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and colleagues. You'll recall at our last meeting under item 3, we had a number of discussion related to privacy and access matter. And at the end of the meeting, or at the end of that discussion, Mr. Manconi volunteered to write a letter to the Commission clarifying a couple of topics. So I'd like to propose that we enter that in the minute, this action item, worded as following some discussion. The Commission requested staff to provide additional information confirming that the new transit network surveillance system will not collect biometric data and that access to the data by law enforcement agencies will be strictly controlled under the access protocols contained in the policy. Mr. Manconi agreed to provide a memo to the Commission on this request.
That's how I remember it. Does any member of the Commission have an objection to the amendment? Say none. Is it carried? Carried. So the minutes as amended? Carried. Thank you very much. Item number 1, we do have a response to inquiries. Item number 1 is the 2017 Draft Operating Capital Budget Transit Commission, and there is a presentation. So, Mr. Manconi, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission. I want to walk through the draft 2017 budget and share with you the inputs that went into the development of it that's before you. Starting off on page 2 of the slide deck, the key elements include, of course, the transit affordability plan, and that spans multiple elements, the capital contributions, the revenue ratio, cost ratio targets, et cetera, that we've talked about before. There is the 2.5% increase to the transit levy that was identified in the Transit Affordability Plan, along with the prorated share of the estimated 1.3% increase in taxes from growth assessment. In terms of budget ridership, we're at 96.7, or last year was 97 million customer trips from a rounding perspective. So what we're saying there is we're going to be conservative on our ridership. We're assuming it's not increasing. If it does increase, then that helps us in terms of our financial situation. So that also includes the 800,000 trips on Paratranspo. In terms of fare revenue, it's $192 million from both conventional service and $2 million from Paratranspo. And the fare increase that you approved back in June of this year, 1.25% effective January 1, with the exception, of course, of the U-Pass, which has a contractual obligation of 2.5% effective September 1. So in terms of the operating budget, it's just over $500 million, so $503 million in 2017 that's proposed. Operating costs, $400 million. Contribution to reserves is at $63 million, and there's a small contribution to a pension deficit of $0.4 million. And then finally, there's the debt charges of $39.5 million. How is that all funded? $193 million comes from customers' fares, $274 million comes from property taxes, and the balance of $38 million is other revenues, which also includes the provincial gas tax. In terms of balancing the budget vis-a-vis the targets, it's pretty straightforward this year. There's a small budget base adjustment of $0.9 million. To maintain current service levels, it's $11.4 million. Growth, that is a very small number, because I'll explain the growth that the Mayor mentioned in his speech. There is a major investment in growth out to to service our growth areas, but this is the small portion that's required for December, because we get our buses in November and we'll put them into service by the end of this year. Revenue, this is just good financing. This is to match, as you know, in our quarterly status updates for our forecasts. We've continually reminded you that we know customers are making different fare choices, so we're just cleaning that up and making that revenue adjustment of $2.4 million. So that balances the books in terms of achieving our target of $10.1 million. And the good news on that is the revenue cost ratio is at 51%, which we like to see that being as high as we can achieve it, of course. In terms of capital highlights, there's a lot of investments occurring throughout the system in terms of transitway and O-train station improvements. This is everything from accessibility to safety and security issues, all focused on our customers and our operators. In terms of the O-train and also capital life cycle state of good repair, that is a term that obviously we've used in the past. We want to maintain everything in good life cycle management practices, so that's $6.4 million investment there. And then all our operations and control systems in terms of keeping them current, keeping them up to date in terms of needing the systems to be operating 24/7 to maintain both our bus and our rail systems. And then lastly, there's the operational equipment and facility life cycle replacement program. This is being proactive in our life cycle management of both minor and major infrastructure that we manage throughout the system and equipment. Next, I want to talk about expansion to our growing areas. We've heard over and over again that we have a lot of growth in the city, and we have not invested in new service, particularly during when it's needed the most, which is peak period. So I'm happy to announce that there's an investment on an annual basis, is an investment of $3.5 million. When you net out the revenue, it's a total expenditure of $1.67 million. We are buying 17 additional double-decker buses of an investment of $18.4 million. And when this service matures, that will add almost 1 million new customer trips to the system, and also is important in terms of not only managing growth and servicing our customers, but also linking up accessibility to the O-Train Confederation line. So in terms of the investment of that amount, it's going to affect multiple wards, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 10, 12, 13, 17, 19, 22, and 23. We're going to be, Mr. Scrimgeour is going to be meeting every one of those ward councillors and will walk you through what is being proposed. Those meetings will occur very shortly, and so we'll be reaching out to your offices to walk you through that. Adding service, what we heard over and over again was it needed to occur in peak hour service, hence the need for additional buses, because that's we don't have buses for peak service just sitting around waiting. So the investment in that capital acquisition of those buses is important. So this will be during peak hour periods. And this is the first major investment in service expansion in growing areas in many, many years. As I said earlier on, we'll brief each ward councillor. You heard the mayor and the chair announce investment in a low-income pass. It's called the EquiPass. It's a discounted fare product for residents of our city who meet the eligibility criteria. We're going to use the low-income cutoff defined by Stats Canada. We've mentioned that to you in the past. Obviously it's for people that really need this in terms of helping them get through their life, and they don't have the share of income that others do. The discounted pass would be valid for all OC Transpo service, including para and STO. That has come up in the past, so I wanted to clarify that for you. We are working with the application and registration process. It's going to be developed in, it'll be finalized by the end of Q1 2017, and we're going to make it available in Q2 of 2017. The annual investment is $2.7 million, and that's included in the Community and Social Services budget, so it'll be a transfer over to OC Transpo. It's a deep discount of 50% off the regular adult pass, so the price is going to be $57 in 2017. Customers that currently receive Ontario Works are not eligible, and customers would apply to be registered, and they'll be able to renew their passes at discounted price each month, both online at prestocard.ca or in person at our customer service centres. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That concludes the presentation. Happy to take any of your questions.
Thank you very much. Just to remind commissioners and councillors at the table, and we take only very high-level questions. And I know Councillor Egli is very interested in asking a very high-level question. So over to you.
I actually cleared the question with Mr. Manconi in advance, so he assures me it's high level, but I thought it's something that the whole committee would be interested in. So after the announcement about the pass, I got a couple of questions from people within the social services network about not how we're funding it or anything like that, and the feedback was actually quite positive around what we were trying to do. But there were questions, Mr. Manconi, about how the income level is going to be tested, first of all, and secondly, how we were going to make this pass available for purchase. A single location online or what? So those are the two issues that were raised for me around the pass.
We're working with Ms. Burrell and her team over in social services on a lot of these elements, and we want to do it right and get it right in terms of where and so forth. We're really thinking through all that, and we're open to suggestions. So if there's some ideas you hear from the community, please let us know. I'm going to ask Mr. Scrimgeour to walk you through the income level testing.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. We're following. We've looked at what a number of municipalities are doing right now with their discounted passes, and the different ways that they're having people demonstrate their income level. For instance, we were looking recently at the Calgary Transit page, and they've got about 8 different forms of documentation that they accept. So people will come to a counter, whether it's an OC Transpo counter or a city counter is what we're working out, show their documentation, make their application, and then we will find a way of getting back in touch with them to show that they're registered, and then they'll be able to get their first pass and each renewal each month, either online or at one of our customer service centres.
I think that just one thing I'd throw out there as a high-level suggestion, as opposed to a question, is perhaps tapping into some of the community service agencies, and maybe you can, I don't know, set up mini opportunities for people to come into those offices and for an OC Transport employee to be there to do the paperwork or help people through the paper. Just a suggestion, but I think that would be welcomed in the community.
Yes, certainly, particularly the first round out. We want to get innovative like we did with the distribution of the Presto passes. We went out and met with customers, so we'll get very innovative on this.
Thank you very much, Councillor Leeper.
Thank you, Chair. I hope you'll allow a quick question of clarification. It's when you say the LICO, is that you'll determine it according to whether or not the household falls below the LICO cutoff. Is that the Ottawa-Gatineau LICO or the national LICO?
We will. This is one of the technical matters that we'll be working on over the next few months, and we want to work with the most applicable, and we'll see whether that's the more recent or we think the national is updated a year earlier than the local, so we'll work that out. And it depends on the household size.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cloutier.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Thank you for the presentation. Just a couple of clarification questions. On slide 3, the debt charges, 39.5, is that interest and principal repayment, or is it, yes it is, thank you. On slide 4, there is a $2.4 million revenue fare choices. People are using higher fares than we expected in the fare mix?
Mr. Chair, no, customers have been choosing, among the fare choices that we've given them, they've been choosing the type of fare that works best for them, which is often the one that has the lowest cost for them, for their trips, depending on the number of trips they make and the type of trips they make, which has resulted in customers making choices of lower fares than the predicted average that we had going into last year, into this year.
Lower fares or higher fares?
Lower.
But it's a $2.4 million revenue. It's a negative 2.4 on slide 4.
What I believe that is a net number. So you actually have your fare increase, but then you have to adjust it for the fact that customers are choosing a lower fare product. So what you're seeing there is a net number. So it's
okay.
Two numbers combined.
So some people. Well, let me ask this, just if I may, Mr. Chair. You had a ridership number. How is ridership? Can you tell us where ridership is for 2016, just so?
So we don't have any recent data. We're just reconciling the September information. So you recall the last time we were before you were up slightly.
A little bit.
We hope that trend continues, but it's too early to tell.
Okay.
So we're staying conservative on the estimate. And this, the Treasurer is right yet again, because this is all about the discussion we had is let's get the math right on this revenue thing, because it was doing some things that were causing us to be challenged in the revenue line. And as Pat always describes it, it's people are making. Presto opened up a series of choices, and people are starting to count their trips and saying, well, I'm not going to buy that pass, I'm going to do the pay-as-I-go. That's what this is all about.
I understand that, but it's as it's presented here. It's a fine number. If the fare mix it seems to be the way I'm reading it, unless I'm making an error, in the net is an increase in revenue of $2.4 million.
It is an increase in $2.4 million, but well, we won't get into debate here, but It is adjusted to reflect the fact that we do have a base that's choosing a lower cost per ride.
And I understand that. On slide 5, the transitway improvements, are these all numbers that we've seen at part of the existing LRT budget? Any big changes, any big departures from numbers we've seen, aggregate numbers that we've seen in the past? We're on schedule, we're on...
There's no surprises in the budget other than we're doing a very good job of closing off WIPs and making sure that capital accounts are being managed, and if we don't need to do the projects, we're not doing them. So there's no surprises there.
On slide 6, 17 new buses. Did I hear the mayor this morning say that that was being funded by another level of government? The 17
It was part of the
buses.
PTIF application, correct.
We've made an application.
It's all rolled in as part of that.
Okay. Almost done, Chair. On slide 8, the $2.7 million for Equipass is being funded by Community and Social Services budget. Is that precedent setting? In the past, has any income-based funding been from transit operations or from another budget?
Actually, it's not precedent setting. It was precedent setting in 2010 when the decision was made that you would separate basically your social services arm of the city from your bus company. And so if you were going to provide subsidy to users, it would be coming from community and social services over to transit and not have transit absorb the subsidy.
The transit system is not in the social services business. Okay. And just on slide 9, my last question: if a customer is approved for the Equipass for the low-income cutoff, whether it be the national or the Ottawa-Gatineau one, that would be good for the entire year. That registration. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Councillor Nussbaum.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question on the Equipass. If too detailed, I'm happy to take it offline. But just in doing the quick math, the $2.7 million at around a $700 a year discount roughly equals about 4,000 passes, roughly. This is not accurate. But how did you arrive? I mean, this is just a forecast of how much this is going to cost, but I'm just wondering if you can give us a sense of how you arrived at the forecast of roughly 4,000 users who might be interested in applying for the pass.
Yes, certainly. It's 4,700 is the number that we've always had, and the math is the same as the math that you've seen, I think, the 2 previous time that we've had it before commission, and we're happy to walk you through it. Maybe Pat and I can meet with you to take you through all that in finite detail.
Perfect. Thank you, Commissioner Crew.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one quick question to clarify my understanding. What's the relationship between the 0.2 million budget pressure for growth, as shown on slide 4, and the 1.67 million net of revenue for service expansion to growing areas on slide 6?
The 0.2 funds the service from the date, I believe, is December 24th to the end of the year, because that's when we'll put the buses in service and we'll do our service change. The 1.67 is your annualized amount after you back out the revenue.
So the 0.2 is just addressing the balance of this fiscal
year. We need a little bit of money to do this year, to do the end of 2017.
Okay, thank you. That's my only question. Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you very much. Seeing no other questions, Councillor Kakish has a motion.
That the Transit Commission receive, table, and refer this item to its meeting on December 5th, 2016.
It's received. Carried. Thank you very much. Item number 2 is the status update. Motions increase for the period ending October 28, 2016. Are there any questions on this? Is this received? Received. Thank you. And finally, we have the delegation of authority contracts awarded for the period of January 1, 16 to June 30, 16 for transit services. Is this received? Received. Thank you very much. There are no in-camera items. There is no other business. Any motions, inquiries? Commissioner Burt.
I have an inquiry. And I respect that OC Transport staff is pretty busy, so I'm trying to keep this one relatively simple, but I want to try to be able to pursue the objectives for providing the best service for transit users, including attracting the number of customers to transit. So I would like transit staff to provide titles, summaries, results, synopsis, and recommendation status of ridership studies since 2000. Links or hard copies would be appreciated. Advise of any current strategies on ridership, associated action plans, and expected outcomes. And if there is no ridership augmentation strategy, to provide the time frame when one would be in place or the reasons why it's not required.
Thank you very much. Seeing nothing else, are we adjourned? Adjourned. Perfect. Thank you very much, everyone. Just a reminder, the next meeting is on December 5th, Monday morning.